What's up, guys? This is Jesse DeRozier with Hydrilla Gorilla Guide Service here in Lake Guntersville. This report is for July 25th, 2025, and this is what's on the deck. So the last couple of weeks, I've been cutting back on the number of guide trips that I've booked due to the fact that I knew that my boat was needing some repairs, and I needed to try to schedule these repairs at the same time. So I had to have my trolling motor taken off. As you can see behind me, there's just a bracket left there. Trolling motor's in the shop currently getting fixed and looking at a couple week turnaround on that, as well as my boat has a gel coat, a crack in the gel coat that I've got to get repaired, and it's going in the shop tomorrow morning. So before it took off, I figured I'd go ahead and try to get a report out for you guys for what information that I did have. I had a couple of guide trips over the last couple of weeks, not a full booking, as well as some trips that I made with some friends of mine. So I do have some information, just not as much as I typically would have. So without further ado, I guess let's go ahead and get started on the information that I do have. So basically in the daytime, we've been running two basic patterns. We've been fishing the inside grass lines or shallow grass flats, and outside grass line, or say the edges of your river channel ledge or just your outside hard edge of your grass line. That being in that, say, 9 to 12 foot of water. So on those two techniques, these are the lures that we've been using. First, let's start with a little bit of topwater action that we've been seeing going on. So there is a topwater bite. If you happen to run into it, be prepared for it, because it can go down pretty quickly. There has been a lot of floating eelgrass on the lake since they've been spraying and killing the grass like crazy. There's a lot of that uprooted grass. You'll see it floating, and it's just got little roots all over it, so you know that it's just dying and pulling out of the bottom of the lake from them killing it. So with that much grass being out on the surface of the water, you're limited on some of the techniques that you can throw. If you try throwing a spook, a lot of times it fouls up, picks up one piece of grass, and the bite, or your action off the bait, just dies. A pop-bar is a little bit better. A buzz bait, kind of the same deal. You're going to kind of foul up in some areas if it's thicker. If it's minor grass, you might still be able to throw it. But some of the better techniques would be kind of like your zoo pop, which is like a frog style pop-bar body. Basically, it's pop-bar body with like frog hooks. That would be a great choice. A frog would be a decent option in like a shad pattern. Or what we've been doing is actually utilizing a fluke style bait. I rig mine up a little bit different than a lot of guys. I know most guys are typically going to throw just your standard worm hook as their hook. The reason why I do this is, one, for it to be weedless, but two, is it actually gives it a lot more action than just the standard worm hook. So first and foremost is I utilize a barrel swivel. 10 to 12 inches up the line, and it gives it that extra kick point a little bit further up the line. It also kind of looks like the bait fish is kind of chasing something. So it kind of does add a little bit of added action to the line. The second thing is the hook that I'm using is actually, it's the one that I use for my wacky rigs. It's got a little bit of a grass guard on it, monofilament grass guard. And if you look closely, you can see that CPS spring twisted into the nose of that bait. So that's an owner center positioning screw is what that's called, CPS spring. Twist it down all the way into the plastic, like literally into the plastic, and then go through the plastic and through the outer ring of that CPS spring so that it's locked in there. Now if you notice, with hardly no movement, that thing just, it kicks around like crazy. So it has a lot more movement than if you're tied your line all the way to that bait, and now you're having to force that monofilament or fluorocarbon to twitch and move. That just, it naturally swings. So now you've got two very, very wide kicking points that allow for that bait to have a lot more action to it. So that's how I end up rigging up my flukes a lot of times. I still use the old standard wide gap hook every once in a while, but that tends to be the way that I like to do it if I'm fishing around these grass mats and things like that. Out on the river channel ledges and stuff like that, where you've got the grass that's starting to mat up on the top, and in the mornings you'll see some of bait fish up flicking around, and you'll get some top water action that tends to mimic it very, very well. You can throw it right up onto the grass mat and twitch it off the grass mat and get smoked. Going actually down into the water column, making contact with the bottom of the lake is going to be my first choice. Right now is going to be that baby brush hog. And I've been throwing it on a fairly lightweight, 1/4 ounce, 3/16, something like that, keeping it fairly light because I'm only working 3 to 4 foot of water typically. My boat might be setting out in 7 when I'm throwing up into the shallows. Trying to find areas that have an inside grass line. It seems like a lot of these fish are traversing up and down these grass lines right now, and it seems to be a great location to be able to get bit. So I'll throw up into the area that's where it's cleared out and bring it to that grass line. It's like right when you get to that grass line is when you're getting smacked. As far as colors of the brush hog, we've thrown peanut butter and jelly, we've thrown June bug, we've thrown watermelon red, and green pumpkin. Green pumpkin definitely seems to be probably the best bite or best color choice for numbers of bites, but literally right now they're eating any of the above. Next, kind of sticking with that green pumpkin, moving out a little bit deeper, is going to be just your shaky head. Now I like a shaky head that's a little bit heavier than probably you would run in most circumstances, because a lot of times on TVA we're fishing around some sort of current. Even if it's only like 18 or 19,000 CFS, it seems to be still enough that you're going to get a little bit of a drift. So I want a bait that is going to have enough weight to be able to get it to go down to the bottom, but when I bump it, it's got a light enough weight that it's going to drift. So your line is going to get a bow in it from the current. That current's going to push against your line and help sweep your bait down the current. And if you've got too heavy, you're just going to stay static to the bait, right? And every time you move it, it's going to move. I want a bait that literally, when I bump it and lift it up off the bottom, say I only bump it this high, it might move that far before it actually makes contact back to the bottom, because it's going to get lifted up and it's going to sweep and slowly fall back to the bottom, and that tail is going to have all kind of action in that current. It seems to be the most natural presentation for what they're used to seeing. You think about it, they're used to always having the current bring them their food if they're out there around these ledges. So having something that is allowed to kind of drift with the current definitely makes a difference in the number of bites that you'll get, just because it's more natural. Another bait that I drift is going to be the Nico rig. This is the Magnum Trick Worm by Zoom and Plum Apple, and it's got, I think it's an 1/8 ounce weight in the end of it. Of course, you got your O-ring, and again, some sort of a weedless or grass, some sort of a grass guard on these baits. The reason why I do that, again, just to kind of help with my clients not having to fight with the frustration of eelgrass. If you fish here all the time, it's just part of it. You don't really think about it. But if you don't fish here, it tends to be very frustrating a lot for clients. So I try to give them some sort of help with fighting with the grass if I can. Next bait, again, going back to the green pumpkin, is going to be a drop shot. So you notice again the hook, it's got some sort of a weed guard on it. And then I'm using the Elastec bait made by Z-Man. It's called Long Shots is the worm. It's about a 6-inch Elastec worm, and you talk about phenomenal action in the current. Now that's one where you can actually go heavy enough if you wanted to hold it static where it didn't move until you're ready to move it. But I personally still, you notice it's pretty light little weight. I like one that still drifts. But if you were to hold that static, you can literally just shake the line and that thing's going to dance and quiver, because with it being Elastec, it stays straight out. If you were to put like a Zoom Trick worm on there, the weight of the worm itself is going to fall and not really stay upright. But with the Elastec, that thing will literally set horizontal in the water, and every bit of water movement that is going over that is going to give that thing action, as well as any movement of that line is going to give it action. It's probably one of the best drop shot baits I've ever seen. Going more towards our power fishing side, getting into your bait casters and stuff like that. On the outside grass edges, Again, keeping the weight fairly light that's either a quarter or I think it's quarter ounce weight, and just your old monster worm in plum. So sticking with some sort of a red coloration in my baits on almost every one of these next techniques. And the reason for that is, as we all know, plum's just a color, and TVA, it works really, really well. Plum, plum apple, red bug, anything that kind of has that red hue. Well, think about the reason why behind that. Well, this past week while I was out with a buddy of mine, we saw 3 fish in a row come in the boat, and every one of them had crawfish antenna sticking out of its throat. There's a lot of crawfish on the lake right now that are getting eaten, and I would say it's a very prominent pattern versus them eating shad right now. And reached down in the throat of that fish, pulled out crawfish, and the pinchers red and black. Now I'm talking bright red and solid black, all down the knuckles. It was just interwoven, those two colors. And so I went home, and you know, we always hear match the hatch. So the first thing I did is come home, started getting together reds and blacks. So that's now my jig that I'm throwing out there on those hard pan areas. You notice the paint completely gone. This jig has no bait keeper, so using the Avid Anglers fishing glue to keep my trailers up. And then next bait, again, kind of the jigs theme. It's an Arky head jig with red and black crawfish. Throwing this out again, hitting those outside edges of the grass and pulling it into those hard pan areas. Same areas that I've been working that old monster worm. Those crawfish are thick in the grass right now, guys. Everybody thinks of crawfish being around rocks and underneath the rocks and things like that. Here on Guntersville, we have them that live literally in the grass, just fields and fields of grass. Those crawfish live in them. So if you're fishing grass flats, keep that in mind. Again, up on those inside grass edges, or coming over the grass edges and getting into the actual grass mat itself, is red and black chatterbait. Now the difference with this is kind of leaning a little bit more towards some blacks with red highlights. Not so much like we do in the spring where it's more red with a little black. I'm definitely putting a lot more black in this based on what I saw off the crawfish. So this is one of the jigs that I tied up last week for my clients. Red and black swim jig, and using the Elastec fire craw trailer from Z-Man, and that combo on my guide trip, was it Monday or Tuesday? I can't remember what day it was. We only threw swim jigs for about 20 minutes, but in that 20 minutes we ended up putting several in the boat very quickly. That's basically our daytime patterns. Now switching over to our night bite. In the summertime on Lake Guntersville, it's absolutely phenomenal night bite. I wish it was more prominent here than what it is. It's definitely starting to grow a little bit, but you get up to Lake Chickamauga or some of the lakes on the Coosa River, that night bite is really strong. You have a lot of guys who do it. I would love to see more participation here on Lake Guntersville as well, with people realizing how good the night bite really is actually on this lake. Now, granted, you got to fight with the eelgrass. That's probably the one thing that's probably kept most people from getting into it here. But believe it or not, guys, it's not that difficult to fish out here in the dark with the eelgrass. If you look at which way the wind's been blowing for the day, if it's coming out of the west, that means it's been pushing it to the east side of the lake. When you go out at night, fish the west side. If it's been coming out of the south, it's going to push it all up against your north side banks. So fish your south, southern banks. Just fish the opposite side of where the eelgrass has been getting blown to during the day that day. So just watch the weather before your trip. It'll tell you where you need to concentrate. So with that said, there's a couple of different techniques that I do at night. A couple are moving baits and a couple are bottom bouncing baits. So I've got about 5 techniques that I mainly concentrate on, and the colors, basically stick with darks, anything dark that's going to silhouette. Doesn't really matter specifics on specific colors. Don't get so tied up in that as much as just it being having a dark silhouette will help. But I mean, you can literally go out and throw a white chatterbait in the dark and still get bit. They're going to find it off of the vibration. The color's not a specific thing. It's just on a dark night, a dark bait silhouette's a little bit better. On a bright night, it's not going to matter one way or the other what you're throwing. So, sticking with that thought process, a great nighttime bait is just going to be an old monster worm. It's got a lot of vibration coming off the tail, and as such, those fish will find it in the dark. Again, anything dark, you could throw black and blue if you wanted to. You can throw the plum, red bug, it doesn't matter. You can throw the same bait you're throwing in the daytime, so it saves you from having to change up kind of your colors from your daytime if you don't want to. Again, I could just pick that red and black up, throwing a jig out there, working that around those hard pan areas, any of those ledge spots, things like that where these fish are schooled up during the day, and be able to throw that jig out there. So those are 2 of my techniques. The other 3 are going to be moving baits. And my 4-wheel drive at night is definitely going to be the swim jig. The reason I love the swim jig is because even if you're in an area, say you don't have any wind out there at all, it's been dead calm during the day and the eelgrass is just spread all over the lake, that right there is going to fish more efficiently through that floating eelgrass than anything. As it gets on your line, you can twitch it and it will literally clear off of that bait better than any other. You can throw that in super shallow water, you can throw it out there in the deep and just crawl it back. The swim jig's just that versatile. It's probably one of the best nighttime baits that you're going to find. And you would think, oh, well, it doesn't have a lot of action. Trust me, it doesn't have to. They will find it. Next is going to be, as I mentioned, a chatterbait. You can throw, like I said, you can throw white if you wanted to. It doesn't matter. There's enough vibration coming off of a chatterbait. They're going to find it regardless of what the color is. If you're in a dark area, it doesn't have a lot of light around it, whether it be moonlight, street lights, dock lights, anything like that. I do like to throw a dark color just so that it silhouettes and shadows a little bit better. It kind of gives them a little bit more of something to hone in on in the dark. I don't care if it's black and chartreuse, black and red, solid black. It doesn't matter. But as long as it's got some black to it, I like it just so that it silhouettes. And then I do like to have a bright contrasting trailer. And the reason why I do the contrasting trailer is because I feel like as the fish gets up on top of the bait, it definitely gives them something to hone in on. If there is enough light cascading, say from street lights, docks, or moonlight, and that's running only up in the shallows, there's enough light penetration going through that water that they can pick up on that little bit of brighter color and kind of hone in on that. One of the other things that kind of help them hone in on it is definitely going to be picking up some Thump Gel and adding that to the bait, so that when they get up behind it and they start to track it, they literally, when they get in that scent trail of that, they will commit, and when they smoke it, they will absolutely crush it and jar it to the point that it'll rip the rod out of your hand. The last technique for me is probably my favorite, and probably my favorite bite of all at night, which is a spinnerbait. Nighttime spinnerbait is a very, very awesome technique. I don't care what lake you're on in the country. Nighttime spinnerbait is probably one of the funnest bites that you're ever going to have. Go get a big Colorado blade. For a ½ ounce, I usually use a number 5. For a 3/4, I'm going to use a number 6, and for a 1 ounce, I'm going to use a number 7 blade. This is a ½ ounce. So again, black and blue, black and red, I don't care, just as long as it's got some black to it, silhouettes. I'm going to run a bright trailer and a number 5 Colorado on that ½ ounce. Now on that ½ ounce, I'm going to work it in that 0 to say 5-6 foot of water. I don't work it out typically that deep. It gets hard to continue to feel that blade thumping if you start to work deeper with it. So for me to be able to feel that, I'm going to bump up in weight of the spinnerbait where I can still continue to bring it at a decent enough pace that I'm getting that feedback on the blade. So for that, getting out in that deeper water, I'm going to pick up a 3/4 ounce. So same exact spinner bait, just bumped up, number 6 Colorado, 3/4 ounce head. These are poured with no bait keeper. So again, guys, the Avid Angler's fishing glue is a must if you're going to have a bait like this. Otherwise, this would continue to slide down. You can see that that trailer's torn, right? It's been ripped right there. But because of that glue, it ain't going nowhere. So I can continue to fish that until that bait just literally gets shredded off of there. A trailer hook is kind of optional. You notice the last bait didn't have one, this one does. The heavier that you get on the spinner bait, the easier it is for them to throw it. And that's something that you'll notice a lot at night. When they bite at night, the first thing they want to do is come straight to the surface. It is unbelievable how fast they'll come up, especially if you're catching them out of shallower water. If you catch them out in 12, 15 foot of water, obviously it's going to take longer for them to come up and jump. But if you're catching them in that shallows, that's the first thing they do. I mean, they literally will shoot straight to the surface. But with that 3/4 ounce, a lot of times, that's a lot of weight for them to throw around in the dark. And they will sling 50% of the time, they're going to sling that out. So yes, it's frustrating with the eelgrass to run a trailer hook, but it might be necessary if you get up into fishing your 3/4 ounce. If you're fishing your half, you might be able to get away with it without throwing it as easily. But the heavier I go, I've noticed that it's definitely a necessity. Now you will fight with the tail from your trailer getting hung up in that occasionally, so keep an eye on that, because you do want to have that back there kicking. But that right there is probably my number one when it comes to nighttime fishing. That is a phenomenal bite. It's just absolutely fun. But make sure you guys, again, adding some scent to it. If you want to keep your trailers up, not have to be replacing them, add your glue. You'll be set and ready to go for your night bite. But that's basically it for this week, guys. I hope this information helps you out. Hope you're able to get out there on the water and catch some of these fish. Hopefully over the next couple of weeks I'll have some buddies that'll let me jump in the boat with them, being I'm going to be without a boat. And until then, I should be back running wide open come beginning of September. So until then, I might not have any information to be able to put out there. So we might see a drop in the videos for a couple weeks until I get my boat back and get it rigged back up. But once I do, I'll definitely get some videos back on for you guys. But again, hope this information helps you out. Until then, tight lines, guys.